The movie started 20 minutes ago. I don't think either of us has been paying attention. The opening scene is still playing, or maybe it's already over. I honestly couldn't tell you what the story's about. You've been sitting beside me, curled up beneath the blanket, stealing most of it, the way you always do. A bowl of popcorn rest between us on the sofa, half of it untouched, because we keep talking through the important parts. The lamp in the corner cast a soft circle on the floor, and somehow the room feels smaller tonight, in the best possible way. I used to think good memories announced themselves, but most of them arrive quietly like this. The credits could roll right now, and I wouldn't mind, because the best part of tonight isn't happening on the screen. It's the sound of your laugh breaking through the dialogue, the way your hand finds mine without thinking about it, the way an ordinary evening turns into something worth remembering. You point out an actor you've seen somewhere before, then spend 5 whole minutes trying to remember where. I pretend to help, but mostly I enjoy watching you search your memory like it's a treasure map outside the window. A car passes slowly, streetlights stretch across the glass, disappear. The neighborhood grows quieter, one house at a time, while we stay exactly where we are. Funny how comfort can feel exciting too. The credits could roll right now, and I wouldn't mind, because the best part of tonight has nothing to do with the plot. It's the way you lean your head against my shoulder, like you've done 100 times, and somehow it still feels new. A younger version of me would have expected love to look larger somehow. Grand gestures, perfect timing, movie scenes and dramatic declarations. But sitting here tonight, listening to you argue with a fictional character on television, I think this might be better, because it's real, because it's ours, because nobody else would even notice it. The popcorn's gone stale, the tea's gone cold, the movie keeps moving toward an ending neither of us are following. And honestly, that feels like the point. Some nights aren't memorable because of what happened. Some nights are memorable because of who was there. Fly, the credits finally roll across the screen. The room grows quiet for a moment before we start talking again about nothing important, about everything. And as the evening settles around the edges of the room, I realize there isn't anywhere else I'd rather be. The movie is over, the night isn't, and somehow that's my favorite part. We only came in for 3 things at least. That was the plan. The shopping cart squeaks every few steps, pulling slightly to the left, like it has opinions about where we're going. You stop in front of the produce section, holding 2 tomatoes like you're making a life-changing decision. I pretend to be patient, but mostly I just enjoy watching the serious face you make over completely unserious things. The store speakers are playing a song from 10 years ago, and suddenly we're both singing second of it for anything else today. You always forget why we came down an aisle, then remember halfway back and turn around without warning. A child races past us wearing oversized rain boots, even though the sky is clear, and somehow that feels exactly right. The bakery smells dangerous, the freezer section feels like winter, and every corner of the store seems to contain a different season. I used to think adventure looked bigger than this. The list gets longer, the afternoon keeps moving. Sunlight follows us through the front windows, and somehow this ordinary Saturday feels strangely perfect. At checkout, you realize you forgot one thing, the thing we originally came for, which somehow feels appropriate, considering we spent 20 minutes debating snacks and 5 minutes discussing whether we really need another candle. The answer was probably no, but it ended up in the cart anyway. Years from now I probably won't remember what we bought or what we spent or what song was playing, but I think I'll remember standing beside you, trying not to laugh while you compared tomatoes like a professional judge. The bag sit in the backseat, the receipt's already lost. The afternoon stretches ahead without much of a plan, and honestly, that's exactly what makes it good. We only came in for 3 things. I think we bought 12. Neither of us were hungry. At least, that's what we said. The apartment was quiet, except for the refrigerator humming like it always does after midnight. The movie had ended an hour ago, the dishes were mostly done. The city outside had finally started slowing down. You stood barefoot in the kitchen, looking through the cabinets like the answer to some important question might be hiding behind a box of cereal. I asked what you were looking for, you said, I'll know when I find it, which somehow sounded completely reasonable at the time. Maybe that's what happens when it's late enough. The kitchen light was the only thing awake. The rest of the apartment faded into shadows. We talked about nothing and stayed there anyway, like the night was giving us a few extra minutes before tomorrow arrived. You found crackers, I found leftover fruit. Neither of us seemed particularly excited about either option. Still, we arranged everything on a plate like we were hosting some tiny celebration for absolutely no reason. The clock moved quietly across the microwave display. A song played from someone's apartment across the courtyard, too distant to recognize, but close enough to feel familiar. Some moments don't need a purpose to feel important. The kitchen light reflected in the window, making it impossible to see outside, so the whole world became this room, this conversation, this ordinary little moment that somehow felt complete. You told me a story I'd already heard before, and I still listened like it was new, because somehow the details change slightly every time you tell it. Or maybe I just like hearing you tell it. I used to imagine love would always feel exciting, like something happening. Now I think sometimes it feels more like this: a quiet room at midnight, and nowhere else either of us needs to be. The crackers disappeared, the fruit disappeared, the conversation drifted from one subject to another without ever deciding where it wanted to go, and somehow that felt like freedom. The kitchen light stayed on a little longer, the city grew quieter, the clock kept moving, and for a moment it felt like time itself had slowed down, just enough for us to notice. Neither of us were hungry, at least that's what we said. But somehow we stayed in the kitchen for another hour. I should probably give it back at some point. It's hanging on the chair beside the window, exactly where I left it 3 days ago, maybe 4. The sleeves are longer than mine, the shoulders sit differently, and somehow the whole apartment feels quieter when it's not around. The coffee maker clicks from the kitchen, the truck passes slowly outside, the neighbor opens their front gate, the morning arrives in pieces, one small sound at a time. Funny how objects can collect memories without even trying. I don't wear it because it's warm, not really. There are plenty of warm things in this apartment. I think I wear it because it reminds me of ordinary afternoons that somehow became important. You left it here by accident, at least that's the official version. The less official version is that neither of us has been in much of a hurry to fix the situation. The cuff is slightly worn near the wrist, a loose thread hangs from one sleeve, little signs that it's been part of your life long before it became part of this room. And somehow that makes me smile. I don't wear it because it's warm, I wear it because the apartment feels different when familiar things are near. The same way songs do, the same way voices do, the same way people do. A younger version of me would have expected love to arrive with certainty, with dramatic moments, with obvious answers. Instead, it arrived disguised as borrowed clothes, shared grocery lists, half-finished conversations, and Sunday mornings that ended too quickly. The sunlight reaches across the floorboards, the coffee grows cold without permission. The morning keeps moving like mornings always do. And somehow the sweater still smells a little like your laundry detergent, though that should have faded by now. I should probably give it back at some point, maybe next week, maybe next month, but for now it's hanging by the window, catching the morning light like like it belongs here. I should probably give it back at some point, just not today. The song wasn't even that good. At least, I don't think it was. It started somewhere from the speaker in the kitchen, a song we both heard before 100 times probably. You were carrying laundry, I was looking for my phone. Neither of us seemed particularly interested in dancing or being romantic or creating a memory. The hallway light flickered once, like it couldn't decide whether to stay on or go to sleep. The basket slipped slightly from your hands. I laughed, you rolled your eyes, and somehow that should have been the end of it. But some moments refuse to stay ordinary. One hand full of laundry, one hand holding mine. The music too quiet, the room too small, and somehow it felt exactly right. No audience, no special occasion, no reason at all. Just another evening turning into something worth remembering. The washing machine hummed from the other room. The refrigerator answered from the kitchen. A car passed outside, throwing headlights across the wall. For a second, everything looked cinematic, then immediately normal again, which somehow made it better. I used to think good memories announced themselves with fireworks, with photographs, with dates you circle on calendars. Now I think some of them begin standing barefoot in a hallway, trying not to drop clean towels. The best parts of life rarely seem to know they're happening. One hand full of laundry, one hand holding mine. The song kept playing, though neither of us knew the words. The evening moved slowly around the edges of the room, and for a minute or two, the whole apartment felt suspended in time. Years from now, I probably won't remember what day it was, or what month, or what song was playing. I won't remember whether it was raining or sunny, or somewhere in between. But I think I'll remember the way you laughed when I almost stepped on your foot, the way the basket tilted sideways, the way we both forgot what we were doing before the music started. The song ended, another one began. The hallway returned to being a hallway. The laundry still needed folding, the dishes still waited near the sink. Nothing really changed, except somehow the evening felt warmer than it had an hour before. One hand full of laundry, one hand holding mine. The lights a little dimmer, the night a little closer. The music faded, the chores remained, but somehow the whole apartment felt brighter than before. The song wasn't even that good, but somehow I still remember it. We could have gone home 10 minutes ago, maybe 20. The convenience store behind us still glowed at the corner. A delivery truck rolled past, slowly heading somewhere neither of us knew. You had your hands in your pockets, I was carrying nothing, and somehow that felt important. No bags, no plans, no destination, just a quiet street and enough time to walk through it. The traffic had mostly disappeared. The city finally exhaled, the kind of hour where every sound travels farther than it does during the day. Funny how conversations change when nobody's in a hurry. The streetlights stretched ahead, one after another, like they were leading us somewhere, though neither of us cared where. The night felt warm, the sidewalk felt endless, and for a little while the whole world became the distance between two corners. You told me a story I've probably heard before, something about a teacher back when you were 16. Halfway through you forgot part of it, then remembered later in the wrong order, which somehow made it better. A bicycle passed us, the rider singing quietly to a song we couldn't hear. The crosswalk changed colors for no one at all, and still the city kept moving around us, like it trusted us to find our own pace. The street lights stretched ahead, the shadows followed behind. The neighborhood drifted by without asking for attention. Somehow the best part of the evening wasn't where we were going, it was getting there. I used to think love would always feel dramatic, big moments, big feelings, big decisions. Now I think sometimes it feels like this, a conversation that keeps changing subjects without needing direction. A walk that should have ended 3 blocks ago, a silence that doesn't need fixing, because it already feels complete. The houses grew quieter, one window at a time. Someone turned off a porch light somewhere down the street. The moon appeared between 2 rooftops, and for a moment everything seemed slower than usual. The street lights stretched ahead, then slowly disappeared behind us, one by one. The night kept moving, the city kept breathing, and neither of us needed anything more than this. We could have gone home 20 minutes ago, but somehow I'm glad we didn't. The coffee finished brewing before either of us spoke. The kitchen was already bright when I walked in. You were standing by the counter, looking out the window, holding a mug, like it was part of the morning ritual. The same way opening the curtains is, the same way checking the weather is, the same way saying, "Did you sleep okay?" has quietly become part of every weekend. The newspaper sat folded between the sugar jar and the fruit bowl. Neither of us seemed interested in reading it yet. The day hadn't really started, and somehow that felt nice. 2 cups cooling slowly beside the window, sunlight moving across the table, minute by minute. No plans, no schedule, no need to rush, just the sound of a quiet morning finding its rhythm. You pointed out a cloud that looked vaguely like a dog. I disagreed for reasons I still can't explain, and somehow we spent 5 minutes discussing it like experts, trying to settle a serious debate. The radio played softly from the next room, a song neither of us knew, yet by the second chorus we were both humming along anyway. moved. A younger version of me would have thought happiness looked more exciting, more obvious, more cinematic. But sitting here now, watching steam disappear from the surface of a mug, I think happiness might actually be quieter than that. Maybe it's this, maybe it's mornings that don't need improving. The clock kept moving, the neighborhood woke up. A lawnmower started somewhere down the street. A dog barked, a car door closed. The world continued exactly as expected, and somehow that made the room feel even calmer. 2 cups cooling slowly, the coffee nearly finished. The morning stretching outward in every direction. No dramatic moment, no perfect ending, just another weekend and the strange comfort of sharing it. The coffee finished brewing a long time ago, and somehow we're still sitting here. The train hadn't left the station, and already I didn't want the day to end. The seats were slightly worn, the window scratched in one corner. A faint reflection floating over the platform. People hurried past outside, holding bags, checking phones, looking for the right carriage. While we sat still watching all of it happen. You unfolded the ticket twice, even though there was no reason to, then folded it again the exact same way. Little habits I've started noticing without meaning to. The train pulled away and the city slowly let go. The landscape kept changing without asking permission. Fields becoming towns, towns becoming rivers. The afternoon unfolding beyond the glass, and somehow every view looked better with someone beside me. Telephone poles passed like pages turning one after another, too fast to count. The sky stretched endlessly above distant rooftops, cloud shadows drifting across green fields. You pointed toward a farmhouse half hidden by trees, and invented an entire story about the people living there. By the end of it, we were both laughing at characters who didn't exist. Funny how imagination travels faster than trains. The landscape kept changing, the sunlight kept shifting across your sleeve, across the table, across the window frame. The miles disappeared without either of us noticing. A younger version of me would have spent the whole journey thinking about the destination, checking the time, planning the next step. Instead, I spent 20 minutes watching reflections move across the glass, and another 10 listening to a story about an imaginary farmer neither of us would ever meet. And somehow that felt like time well spent. The train entered a tunnel. For just a few seconds, the window turned into a mirror, and there we were, floating in the darkness, surrounded by our own reflections. nothing special happened today. At least, not on paper. We woke up late, missed breakfast entirely, shared a cup of coffee without meaning to, spent too long deciding what to watch, then talk through most of it anyway. The grocery bags stayed in the car longer than they should have. The laundry waited, the dishes waited. Half the things we planned never happened, and somehow the day still felt complete. Maybe that's why I keep thinking about it. Not because it was perfect, not because it was unforgettable, not because anything happened that would make a good story. Just because somewhere between the little things I caught myself thinking how lucky I am to be here. The afternoon slipped by quietly, sunlight moving across the floor. One slow inch at a time, you were reading something on your phone, then laughing before finishing it, which made me curious before I even knew why. Outside, the neighborhood continued as usual, people heading somewhere. Traffic lights changing, dogs barking behind fences. The world kept moving, and we stayed exactly where we were. For once that felt like enough. Not because the day was exciting, not because everything went right, not because we solved anything or figured anything out. Just because ordinary moments started feeling larger when they were shared. A younger version of me thought happiness would arrive dramatically. A perfect job, a perfect house, a perfect future, something obvious, something impossible to miss. But now I think it arrives differently, in quiet kitchens, borrowed sweaters, late night walks, half-finished conversations, and mornings that begin slowly. The strange thing is, most of these moments will look completely ordinary to everyone else. Nobody would stop to take a photograph, nobody would write about them, nobody would notice except us. And somehow I think that's what makes them valuable. Not because it was perfect, not because it lasted forever, not because it changed the world or changed our lives, just because for a little while everything felt exactly where it belonged, and standing in the middle of it without realizing it. Until now, I think I was happy. The coffee got cold, the movie ended, the evening disappeared. The dishes eventually got done. Tomorrow will probably look different. But tonight, looking back on today, I keep arriving at the same thought again and again. How lucky I am to be here. The keys land softly in the bowl by the door. The same sound as always. The apartment is quiet except for the refrigerator humming. A familiar light still the stove. The jacket you left over the dining chair hasn't moved all day, and somehow the room feels less empty. Because of it, outside the city continues. Traffic lights changing, people heading somewhere, windows lighting up one by one across the street. The whole neighborhood settling into evening. Funny how certain places start feeling different without changing at all. I used to think home was an address, a street name, a front door, something fixed on a map. But lately, I'm not so sure. Maybe it's the feeling of arriving and knowing someone is glad you're here. The grocery receipt still sits on the counter from a trip neither of us remembers. Very clearly, the coffee mugs from this morning wait beside the sink like evidence that another ordinary day passed through here. The record player stands silent, the blanket stays folded across the sofa, and every object in the room feels connected somehow to 100 small memories. The kind nobody photographs, but nobody forgets. I used to think home was a destination, somewhere you reached after a long journey. Now I think it might be simpler, a conversation continuing where it left off yesterday. Version of me spent years chasing futures, imagining happiness is something waiting ahead, around the next corner, after the next goal, after the next achievement. But somewhere between late night kitchens, weekend grocery runs, train rides, streetlight walks, borrowed sweaters, and quiet mornings, the future stopped feeling quite so far away. The strange thing is nothing here looks remarkable to anyone else. A couch, a lamp, a stack of books, a half-finished cup of tea, a hallway, a window, a kitchen light, and yet somehow an entire life fits inside these details. I used to think home was something you found after years of searching. Now I think maybe it's something you build one ordinary day at a time. One shared meal, one quiet evening, one small memory after another, until one day you look around and realize you've already arrived. The keys rest quietly in the bowl by the door. The city keeps moving outside the window. Tomorrow will bring its own plans, its own noise, its own unfinished list. But tonight the room feels warm, the lights feel soft, and the distance between where I am and where I wanna be feels smaller than it used to. The same walls, the same street, the same evening sky, and somehow everything feels different because you're here, and somehow so am